Salutations, my name is Phil, aka JC Servant. Welcome to another City of Heroes Homecoming video. And today I figured I'm gonna do a tier list. Everyone does tier list. You do tier list, he does tier list, she does tier list. Everybody does tier list. So today we're going to do tier list. So today's tier list is going to be a City of Heroes, of course. That's what I do. It's going to be class soloability, right? Class soloability. And the S at the top, right? We say S tier. That is definitely for Solo Master, right? That is S tier is for Solo Master. And then we'll have A, B, and honestly, I think 3 tiers are enough. You know, we'll have the C tier. The reality is that just about any class can solo if you really need to in City of Heroes. It's just some classes are just so slow at it that I would say it's a subpar experience. So C tier could definitely be considered subpar. So again, to kind of go through these tiers here then, basically, I know a couple of caveats here. So when I talk about soloability, I'm talking about through the leveling process, and I'm talking about using IOs and not big expensive set bonuses to get your defenses up through the roof anyways or whatever have you, because you got billions to spend. If you are so far into the game that you've got billions to spend to buy whatever set you need to make their defenses go through the roof, then chances are you're probably not sitting around soloing in flashbacks and Ouroboros. I also am talking about soloing through the content that the game, the way the designers intended. So I'm talking about looking at this through the lens of just doing like story arcs at ×1 plus 0, right? What is it the developers intended? Now, what that means is you're going to have an array, a diverse array of missions. It's not unusual to do one mission and have it have a bunch of easy enemies, then do another mission and you're fighting a bunch of yellows and oranges, maybe even reds, and there may even be, heaven forbid, an elite boss at the end of it, right? So that's the lens I'm going to be looking at this through when judging these different archetypes. Hopefully I've got them all. I did a quick double mental check, and I think I've got all the classes kind of represented here as we go through them. If I've missed something, or you don't agree with me, or you do agree with me, leave your thoughts in the comments below. With all those disclaimers, oh, one more disclaimer, this is my opinion. As a person who really does a lot of solo content and duos. I think these would also work well for duos. Of course, if you're doing a duo, you're going to want to work with the other person to create something that complements each other. But generally speaking, if something's really good for solo, it's going to work with any other player just about. And if something's really bad at soloing, while it will shine in a group, like, you know, Controller, for example, we'll talk about Controller when we get there, it generally in duos, it needs, it's better than playing solo. But anyways, we're focusing squarely on solo just to keep this conversation to under an hour. All right. We're just going to start taking these classes. But again, it's my opinion. And you down below, you can tell me if you agree, disagree. You can do your own tier list down in the comments below. All right. So let's get to it. The first one is Stalker. So I don't generally like melee classes in any game I play. If I'm given a choice between ranged and melee, I always go with range. I like distance between me and the enemy and whatever have you. I also do not like stealthy classes because they require patience, watching your target, what direction they face. I have to exercise patience in life. I have to exercise patience at red lights in traffic. I have to exercise patience when there's lines at the post office. I don't want to have patience when I'm playing a game. I want to get to the point, or better yet, put the point of my sword in the guy's back if I'm playing melee. So Stalker is one of the last things I ever tried in this game because it just didn't seem like it was for me. But City of Heroes has absolutely surprised me and just how much fun the Stalker can be. You can go into stealth mode, go up, do a big, huge sniper or stalker attack or whatever it's called, and just take a guy right down. It's very similar to the Blaster's sniper attack, really. It's quite capable of taking down a lieutenant in one hit and whatnot. Plus, as you're going through the fight, at least with the Stalker that I'm playing, which is Psychic Ninjutsu, I can do a whole, hey, you don't see me now, and then I can do another backstab, so to speak, during the middle of the fight. So I can get 2 of those bad boys into one. With that being said, it is a lot of fun. It is tremendous fun. However, it does struggle with survivability if there are larger groups, orange and reds. And I haven't even tried to tackle an elite boss with this character and whatnot. So I'm kind of like fun factor. Like this is between a B and an A, really. And the fun factor makes me want to put it into the A. But the thing that makes me want to drag it back down a bit to a B is, and this is from my limited experience because I've not tried all the different Stalker archetype or power sets out there, but I don't have a lot of AoE. I think I got like 1 or something like that. And by the way, Psychic Stalker, confusing people, having them basically beat each other out right before you stab one of them in the abdomen. Again, it's so much fun, but it is slow. I'm killing one at a time, and it probably struggles in survivability against elite bosses. So for now, I'm going to have to put this in the B tier. All right, next one up is Mastermind. Let's be honest, it's Mastermind, right? You literally have your own team of bots or henchmen or thugs or whatever. And we're looking at this through City of Heroes Homecoming, where they recently kind of buffed these guys to where they can handle tougher mobs. I've been running Mastermind for a very long time, since I first came to Homecoming. Even back in Live, I ran Mastermind because I'd love to solo. And you basically got your own team. You basically got your own group. I had a person tell me, I want to play in a team, but I don't want to be with other people. That's what Mastermind does. You will support your bots or support your thugs with your other power set, your secondary, and help them to shine as they get the job done. It's also a very relaxing play style. I just have them go forward and do the thing while I help them when they need it. The only thing you have to kind of keep in mind is if you're playing melee like thugs, you're going to need to pull them back if they start chasing some guy down the hallway. You're going to end up with too much aggro. Really, the only real danger to a Mastermind is when their pets pull too much stuff. And for that, what I usually do is that's why I use bots. And I haven't tried some of the other ones yet. I need to try some more of them. But personally, I pick bots because I saw other Masterminds. I'm like, yeah, I see what happens there. So bots stay back and they just shoot a distance. They don't kill as fast as some of the other ones, but they are pretty sturdy and they just sit back and shoot. So it's really, really great. So they are the key, the exemplary solo class. Absolutely fantastic S tier solo master. All right, the next one we have up is the Brawler. The Brawler is an excellent power set in terms of just creaming things and killing things and whatever have you. Has pretty good defenses. You got the rage mechanic or whatever it's called, where the more you hit people, the more your damage goes up. So it kind of encourages you to go from place to place to place to place. And I generally don't have problem going through content as a brawler. The little bit of, the fact that it has to be melee does mean I'm running things down a bit more than I like to. That's why I'm a fan of range damage. But it absolutely gets the job done. It's a very soloable class, and it plays well with others. It's a fantastic class. I'm not the biggest fan of melee, but Brawler is just an easy one to get people into. And if you're new to the game and you love melee, the Brawler is an easy one to suggest to people. It's an A tier. It's just a great A tier. You're going to enjoy your time with the Brawler through the entire leveling process without even fancy sets. Just make sure you get your normal IOs along the way. The next one up, I believe this is the symbol for the Dominator. I don't have labels on these, but I want to say that's Dominator, so hopefully I'm right on this. Dominator is very interesting because you've got some pretty strong control powers, but your secondary is Blasty, which does some pretty good damage. This is not an easy class to solo, but it is better than its sister, the Controller, and I'll talk about that when I get to Controller. Oh, one other little caveat I forgot to mention at the beginning of this list. I'm taking the archetypes as a whole. I'm fully aware that in some of these archetypes, there are examples of, hey, there's this one that does that. I get it. And we'll put an asterisk on Controller when we get to Controller. But overall, looking at the archetype as a whole, and I have played numerous Dominators, this is one that's a little tough. I would say if you're a new player, this is B, maybe even C, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're not on top of things, and you're not slotting properly, you're going to get your rear end handed to you. But if you've been playing the game for a while, you know how controls work, you know how to stay on top of your IOs as you're leveling up and stuff like that. I have found the Dominator to be a pretty darn fun experience. And I like the fact that there's so many different kinds of dominators. I got like a psychic dominator that's confusing people. I've got the assault control dominator that is using his gun beams and stuff to freeze people or trip them up or whatever the case may be. There's quite the variety there for Dominator, and because its secondary is a damaging power set, it can get through mobs at a relatively decent clip. The thing that kind of holds this back overall, though, is when you get to elite bosses. Holy cow, it's tough because you just don't have the damage output to get through those things in somewhat of a decent amount of time. So it is there for people who are looking for something different, in solo, looking for a challenge. Again, I love DOMs. I really, really do. And I love soloing them. But I recognize that when it comes to just how soloable it is, you're taking on a challenge when you take a DOM. So I have to put it into the B tier. Blaster. So Blaster, when I played on live, I tried soloing a Blaster and I got my butt completely handed to me. Nowadays, there's been enough buffs and everything along those lines that in playing the Blaster through numerous task force and stuff, I don't have the problem. Now, there as much problem. I tend to play snipers, right? I'm going for range damage and doing the range thing, and then I'll use the crowd control. So one of my favorite ones is basically beam rifle and devices. And I'll put the caltrops down and everything, the slow anything that happens to come in. I'll snipe one. I'll use my tier 9 to blast the rest. And anything that comes through is going to hit my caltrops. And by then I'm already just shooting up and cleaning up what is left over. Because of that, I don't have the survivability issues I had in the past. I just think there's been enough buffs and whatever have you. You may struggle at the beginning, and I played a Fire Ice Sentinel through Neutropolis, which is 1 through 20, and those lower levels were a bit tougher. You've got the ice powers to kind of slow them down and stuff, but it could be a little tough. It absolutely can be. But I think it really picks up, pretty quickly at the 20s, and get your tier 9, and you can just kick so much butt. Plus, in Homecoming, they got an extra damage buff because of Defiance. So all that offense means that not a lot of things can survive to get to you to cause you a lot of problems. Obviously, if you get suddenly attacked from behind because you didn't catch a group, you're going to be in trouble. When it comes to elite bosses, now, all these squishy classes will tend to struggle to some degree with elite bosses. Generally speaking, you need to have inspirations on hand for dealing with those. The problem with the Dominator and dealing with elite bosses, you can't kill them fast enough before those inspirations run out, and you got to take hopefully you got enough to get through. With the Blaster, getting through that boss's hit points is a lot easier to deal with. So, if you had asked me back in live where Blaster was at, I would have told you it's a C tier. But over the last few months, it has moved up into a clear A tier for me. It is something that it is a little bit harder to recommend new people than the Brawler, so I'm going to put it lower than the Brawler. But it definitely is easier than the Sniper or the Dominator for people to solo through. Because of the buffs it's gotten and the fact that it kills so quickly, so a lot of things don't get to you. It does have a few control powers and most of its secondaries to handle the occasional problem that could hit you in the face. So I have to give the Blaster its due here. Then we have the Widow, and I forget what the other one's called, but basically I think it's Arachnos. But this is the elite duo of classes that are from the villain side and whatnot. I've only played them a bit, and I've done a lot of reading. These classes are made to be played in a team. The Widow that I played, it basically felt a little bit like a stalker, but with a lot of abilities that would buff the whole team if I was playing with a team. It feels like a very support-oriented character, and it definitely struggles in solo. I could be missing something here, but to me, this is a C tier. It's just not a character. It's just not a class. I've given it a good college try, and it's a class that I don't care to play in solo. Next up, we have the Sentinel. The Sentinel, as you guys know, is one of my favorite classes to solo. You've got range, you've got great defenses, you've got really pretty good damage. Your damage isn't as good as a Blaster, but your survivability more than makes up for it. When fighting an elite boss, Sometimes I don't even bother with inspirations because I'm able to cake through them. And again, that's just using IOs. When you get into sets later on the end game, or you get some of the powers that cover some of the defenses you might be missing, you have an overall character that can take on quite a bit and still deal out some pretty good damage. I do have a video about Blaster versus Sentinel. You're not mowing them down as fast as a Blaster in most cases, but you're getting them down faster than most, definitely faster than a Dominator and I don't know about a Brawler, but you're up there. You're taking care of things, and you're able to do it from a range. Sentinels is one of my favorite classes to solo, and it's easy to recommend to new players. If you had the fantasy, like the Iron Man fantasy type of thing, or Captain Marvel, this is a great class for you. I feel like it's definitely more soloable than a Blaster, even though it doesn't do as much damage. I don't know whether, yeah, I mean, I personally put it above, this is my list, so I'm going to put it up over a Brawler. Technically, I can see someone making an argument that a Brawler is easier and more soloable. I'm going to say a Sentinel because of the range. I think I could go either way on this one. That's why they're both next to each other on the A tier. They're both A tier. So really, really good. I mean, it's almost so good, it's almost up solo to Solo Master, but let's be honest, only the Mastermind deserves to be at the top here. But I could easily see that one slipping into the Solar Master, because I have soloed completely through with numerous Sentinels, and it's just so much fun, and it's so easy, and I don't worry about dying, and I can relax. I can bump up the difficulty, then I'll start worrying a little bit about dying, and I'm just creaming things still, so it's great. Next one is Tanker. Tanker has a lot more survivability than just about any other class out there. The downside is it kills so slowly. I know people who solo tanks. I really do. God bless all of your hearts. When you're playing a tank, when I'm playing Tanker, the reason why this rate's lower for me is because everything just dies slowly. I know it's got offensive powers in the secondary, but the tanks I play, they just don't kill. And I'm sure there are certain particular builds that will kill faster, and maybe start comparing somehow maybe with some of the other classes I rate higher, but I can't see it. With that being said, it's not complete trash. As long as you're patient, you will eventually solo through. And when you get the AoE power, the secondary, which takes you a while to get, it'll start to pick up some steam. Definitely towards the end game, there are people who, especially with the right sets and whatever have you, can really pick up that. I think this is one of those classes that if I was going to solo through, I would seriously consider getting some sets that buff your offense sooner rather than later. With that being said, the survivability does mean that they can solo as long as you're patient, and they're not going to die as often, and as long as you're patient, they're not going to be as frustrating as some of the other classes that are out there. So for me, I would have to say, like, when it comes to tanking or being a tankard, I think they're a solid B. They're a solid B, just because that killing speed is a little bit lower. I personally, I would much rather play a Stalker, because even though the Stalker's squishier and tends to die a little bit more often in the wrong situations, at least in 90% of the situations, I'm just hot melting through enemies. So to me, Stalker rate's a little bit higher. Actually, I'm not going to lie, I'd rather play Dom. Me personally, I'd rather play Dom than Tanker, but I have to concede that the Tanker is more soloable than a Dominator, unless you're really, really good. So that's my thoughts there. Next one is Scrapper. So Scrapper I played quite a bit of in live, and I've played some here as well. In this one, you've got damage that to me doesn't feel much different than the Brawler. I don't know if it's just me, but the survivability is less. They do have an interesting secondary, and they can do some things with that, but I just, for me, I can never really get the Scrapper to quite click, because at the end of the day, it feels like a Brawler light. And I know that's not true. I'm sure someone can do a breakdown for me, but again, I'm just taking these archetypes as a whole, and I'm not looking into specific builds, and I'm looking at my experience. And in playing it myself, I just feel like I struggle more getting a Scrapper to feel good, whereas a Brute, it just naturally flows. So for me, I have to put this, but it is obviously a soloable class. It does pretty good damage. It does have the survivability you would expect out of a melee class, or at least a non-tanky melee class. You can definitely get some defenses in there before you even get into the really cool armor. And then, as you get further on in the game, you're going to be doing what you think a scrapper should do. I think for soloability and stuff, I have to say I think the stalker for me is more fun. But, the scrapper is actually more soloable, right? It still kind of gets the job done, everything like that. And while it doesn't feel as good as the brute, for me, I'd rather play a scrapper than a tanker for soloing, just because it does kill a lot faster, even if it's not as tanky. So it's definitely better than a brute, but it's still kind of a B tier type of class. So I'm going to give it a high B. I'll give it a B plus for soloing, but the brute, is going to stand pretty far above it. Tank's going to be below it because it just doesn't kill fast enough. You got to have staff. Now, the next one is War Shades, and I forget their counterpart, the Knight, whatevers. I just put one icon for these guys. So if the argument is that Dominator needs to be lower on this list because it's really harder, particularly for new people, to solo effectively, this one's going pretty far down on the list. And that's because you really have to know the game pretty well to do these guys. On top of that, while you're soloing, these things come out, I forget what they're called, and they hunt you down. They just show up out of nowhere while you're in the middle of an instance and hunt you down. If you're not ready for them, they will absolutely own you. I had a friend who was excited to play one of these. He would just get his butt kicked. We duoed together, and all of a sudden, he's going down. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I thought our back was... Nope, there's one of those things chasing him down. If you've exhausted everything else in the game, it might be worth checking into, especially if you're got a couple of friends to watch your back for when some of those surprise attacks happen. But I don't think it's a great idea for solo, and certainly not great for newer players. So to me, I have zero desire to actually solo one of these guys anytime in the near future. So for me, it's a low C tier. I'd rather even play the Widows over that. So C tier it is. Next up is the Defender. The Defender is clearly made to be a support class. It is made to work with other people, period. It does not do well. I am aware, and in fact, I've got a couple of particular builds that can solo somewhat decently as a Defender, and I think that's a fun challenge, and I think that's fun to do. But overall, you don't want to solo a Defender. You probably don't even want to just do a Defender because your benefits are only being multiplied by one other player. In a team where you can spread those buffs and benefits to 4, 5, 6, 7 other, you are shining like a bright star. One of my favorite characters is a Defender. That's what I leveled up to the max in the last SG I was in, and had a great time supporting them and running with them. I love playing support. When I play MMOs, I play healers. I love the Defender. But unlike some MMOs where the support classes can solo pretty well, like World of Warcraft, you can take your priest and be a shadow priest and do that while you're soloing, and then a holy priest when you're with a group. You don't have that kind of flexibility in City of Heroes, particularly with this class. If you want to play a class that can support others and still do well in solo, the Mastermind, for example, secondary is support. The Corruptor, I believe, is also, assault first, support second. They don't have the bonuses, I believe, to the support powers the Defender does, but they can still get the job done for the most part in supporting a team and still be really, pretty strong in solo. So sadly, it's going to have to be a C tier for me, but I'm going to give it a high C tier over these elite classes, because there are particular builds within the Defender that can solo decently well, and you really don't get that with the other two, at least from what I've seen or understood. Again, I could be wrong. The next up is the Controller. And this is another class from the hero side that is specifically made for team play. When you lock mobs down, that's great, but you're not killing them very quickly, and you have very few true offensive powers to do the deed yourself when you're soloing. So it can be really, really rough. Now, this is a class that if you're duoing and you got like a blaster or a scrapper who can do a lot of damage while they're locked down, that can click and do pretty well. I would still argue that a Dominator or something would fit that role better, or a Corruptor, but you do you. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mix up the symbol for Corruptor and... I think when I said this was Blaster, I said that was, I believe that's actually the Corruptor symbol here. Let me just double check my... Yeah, the Blaster is a little crown here. I'm sorry. Let me put the Blaster up here in the A tier. I'm sure some of you were already angrily typing in the comments section because I got Corruptor and Blaster mixed up. Okay, Blaster's back where it belongs, boys and girls. No need to jump to the comments section on that one. Anyways, back to the Controller. So the thing that saves the Controller from absolute abysmal rating is their pets. Most controllers have pets. Some have more than others. I haven't been through every controller power set, so I'm not sure if there's like a power set that doesn't have a pet. But the ones I have played, and it's the same thing with Dominators, that they have a pet, and that can contribute and at least make them start killing things halfway decently, especially if you put some decent IOs in there and whatever have you. So that makes it doable and definitely ranks it above the Defender. And so I'm going to put it here in the B tier, but I am putting it lower than Dominator. Given a choice, I like Dominator. It kills a little bit faster, and their control powers are roughly the same. It has to do with the situation that you're in and whether or not domination is active in dealing with bosses. Honestly, the Dominator has no problem, from what I've seen, locking down every mob outside of a boss. The controller has no problem locking down everything outside of a boss. When you get to bosses, when the domination's active, you got a better chance of that doing something short-term to a boss than a controller. But the key is domination has to be active, so from what I understand. Anyways, there's some nuanced difference there in terms of how their control powers work and their effectiveness. But from my experience, they're both very close in their control powers, but Dominator has better overall damage output, which makes it more soloable than a controller. Both of them require patience. Both of them require you know what you're doing. So for me, they belong side by side. But I'm going to put this one a little bit lower than Dominator because given the choice, I'm going to go with the Dom because they just kill faster. So there you go. Last but not least is Corruptor. Now, Corruptor is definitely a bit of a wild card because its ability to solo, particularly some of the boss encounters or tough encounters, has a lot to do with its secondary and how it's meshing with your primary. You really do need to know a little bit more of what you're doing here. But it is a high damage class. It does some really great damage. You have the Scourge mechanic that kicks in extra damage when enemies are low. Works really great with damage over time things. And there's a couple of power sets that really can take advantage of it, and it's a lot of fun to play. But the key is, because you're not killing as fast as a blaster, you do need to have some breathing space, and that's where the some secondaries create more breathing space than others. You guys probably have seen my video on my storm, on my water blaster, water assault or whatever, storm summoning control, storm summoning, control side of the Corruptor, and just does a ton of damage while locking everything down. Between tripping, knockdown, knockback, whatever. I've got it all between the two power sets. So nothing comes close, and it's one of the most fun classes you can play and play solo. It is challenging. You need to know the game better. You need to know what power sets kind of work well together or be willing to experiment on it to find out what works for you. And even then, you need to have a little bit more control in the battlefield and keep an eye on the enemies and which ones are coming back up, so you can knock them back down again while you're, blasting them away and wearing them down and whatever have you. The cool thing about this class is it works really great in both solo and as a team player because those support powers, are going to be very effective for helping out your teammates if you're playing any team. I love the flexibility of the Corruptor. Where do I think it belongs on this list, though, is a little bit of a tougher question. But for me, I'm going to say this, it's an A tier. It's an A tier. I know that might be shocking because it's not as survivable as, let's say, if you're playing a tanker, right? And that's why the tanker's in the B slot there. But it's much more fun to play. It kills things significantly faster than a tanker. I feel like I'm looking at the B tier list here when it comes to Stalker. More survivable. Maybe I think it kills things as fast, if not faster, than a Stalker just because of the AoEs involved. Scrapper might kill a little bit faster, but doesn't quite survive as well as a well-played one. I don't know. I could go either way on this, but I'm feeling like this is kind of an A- for me. It's below. It's definitely below Blaster. I think Blaster's just a little bit easier to pull off and gives me a little bit more consistent performance. I could honestly, between us girls, I would probably put it above Blaster from my experiences, but I could go either way. I could go either way on that. But you guys can tell me in comments below what you think. But I think I'll keep it. I'll keep it right here. Blaster has been winning me over the more I play it. I'm just surprised I rarely die with Blaster because, and mind you, I don't have hardly any defenses on most of my blasters. So, because I'm still leveling them up. I don't even have a level 50 blaster yet. But I'm just able to kill things before they get to me. With the Corruptor, even with all the control powers and everything, And I've been playing the Pyro Corruptor some. And occasionally things do fall apart, and I get my butt kicked, particularly if something comes out from the side or the back and my things are on cooldown. So I'm going to put it slightly lower than a blaster. Again, that might be a mistake, but that's my list. I think, so to just kind of recap, you know, especially if you're newer to the game, you know, or you're intermediate and you're just looking to enjoy yourself, I do not recommend playing Defenders, Widow, whatever doohickeys they're called, the elite classes, the Peacebringers, and whatever have you, solo. It just seems like a very unfun experience. You know, in the B tier, we have, you know, Scrappers and Snipers, which can be fun but a little bit challenging. But for the most part, you're going to get in there, you're going to beat some people up, and you're going to have a good time. Tankers, you're probably not going to die a lot, maybe, but you're going to kill things so slowly. So, you know, to me, it's okay, but we're getting into an area that's not fun for me, personally. Then we have Controllers and Dominators. I personally do have fun playing them, but I recognize that they don't kill very fast, and they can be particularly challenging in certain situations. I will say, particularly against elite bosses, those classes struggle in solo. So that's why they're kind of at the bottom end of the B tier for me. Even though, again, I super enjoy the challenge and I do it anyways, and I just carry a lot of inspirations. On the A tier, we have, starting from the bottom, we have Corruptors that require more finesse to play well, but not so much so that you feel like you're playing chess. And overall can be a very satisfying class to play and melts enemies pretty quickly and pretty enjoyably. Blaster melts them super fast. So fast that you probably don't need a lot of defenses in most cases, but you still need to be aware of your surroundings and be a bit careful. Then when you get above that, you're getting into Brawler, which, generally speaking, you don't have to be as aware of your surroundings. You can just get in there and beat stuff up and occasionally hit yourself heal or hit a green or a purple, and you're doing great. Same thing with Sentinel. I love Sentinel. You can stand back, you can blast things, and half the time I don't ever use inspirations because I just get through things quickly enough and just have a great job. And at the top of the pile heap is, of course, Masterminds with all of their minions. And one thing you can do with Masterminds, by the way, is you can literally put the attack power or the command, the icon for the minions to attack, put that as your #1 attack power. Like normally where you might put blast or a sniper attack or whatever, like I put my opening attack as #1 and then my follow-up attacks as 2, 3, 4 on my keyboard. #1 is Pet's attack. You can do that. It makes it so much easier to play the class. And that's, you know, and you might want to put a hotkey for calling them back in case they get a little crazy. But you know, play the game however you want. But that's what I do, and I have a great time with Masterminds. Not great in certain groups because they don't like to see all the bots and thugs running around, but in solo, hands down, very solid class. That's my tier list. What do you guys think? Leave your comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, and if you want to join us on Discord, talk some more about strategies, City of Heroes, we're playing Guild Wars 2, anything along those lines, feel free to join our Discord server. The notes are in the comments section below. Or the description or whatever have you. But thank you so much for watching. Until next time, may God bless you.